Right, hello everyone. Thanks for coming along to this final session of MIPCOM 2015. It's called Trending Topics because it's a wrap-up of the biggest trends we've seen, industry trends at MIPCOM and MIP Junior this year. We've analysed those trends on social media, and we've asked this very fine panel to come along and give their analysis of those trends. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce them to you. So, Catherine, you run FanTrust, which is a company that helps entertainment companies do strategy, deal making, and fan building. Am I wrong? You are not wrong. Okay. Great. Thank you for that warm introduction. That you don't have to do yourself. J.A., you're a producer. Yes. Of films. Yes. And TV. Yes. And you're also MIPCOM's #1 social media ambassador, which I think deserves a little round of applause. Yeah.
Thank you.
We made Ali drop. Okay. Kim, you're a producer. You work at the intersection of TV and digital.
That's right.
And you've been coming here for quite a while.
3 years.
3 years,
yeah.
Okay. And Ali, you're a TV presenter, a budding producer, sort of producer in the making. And you, like Catherine, have moderated 1 or 2 panels here at MIPCOM that we're going to talk about during this panel. So, first thing I wanted to ask you all is how was your MIPCOM? Ali, could you answer first?
I think, as all of you guys, I'm absolutely knackered. I'm exhausted. And I can tell you that the only party I did was last night because my session was yesterday morning. Being a committed, responsible presenter, I had to work hard. But it has been incredible. I have some really good stories to tell you about factual television, which I'm really looking forward to.
Thank you very much. Kim?
Yeah, my days here have been extraordinary. This is my 3rd year here, and the first year I came, I knew nobody. Sarah Hemer, who's in the audience, had invited me to be a speaker, and when I came, I was in shock at how much content and how many people there were. And by the 3rd year, this week, I was just so amazed at how many people I knew and had created relationships with, and it was really, really very fulfilling. And the Turkish party was fun, ITV. It was wild.
Great. Jay?
I am absolutely exhausted, and I need another cappuccino. I don't know. Show of hands for how many need a cappuccino? Okay.
But you've had plenty of those.
I need more to stay awake. We just sold our series to Europe, so that was my whole goal of the market, was to come, sell, sell, sell, and I did just that. So thank you.
Great news.
Thank you, MIPCOM. So appreciate it.
How's it been for you, Catherine?
Oh, it's been great. I always perceive kind of 2 worlds divided at MIP. There are the buyers and the deal makers and the transactions happening on the market floor, and then there are all of us who come to get competitive intel, to learn from each other, to talk, and then many of us go back and try and influence others on the floor with what we've learned and who we've met here. So it's really nice to see all of you in the audience coming from down there all the way up here at our last day at MIP.
Great. So you've learned a lot this time?
I truly have. I've had the pleasure of listening to many panels, and I learned a lot from the panels I moderated as well about the sort of OTT trends, specifically for broadcasters that want to get into the Netflix plays, and then also from the disruptors, new and old, Spotify through to others like Victorious that are building new apps that will allow YouTube audiences to engage more directly with YouTube talent.
Great. So that's just one of the many things we'll be digging into over the next hour. What I wanted to show you first was this. As I said, we've scoured the internets and we've pulled up a few trends from both from social media, in terms of Twitter, Facebook, YouTube mentions, and also we've been covering all the entire event, MIPCOM and MIP Junior, with the MIP blog team, with Angela, who's just there. and Stuart, who's hello, Angela, and Stuart, who left this morning. And the good thing about covering all those sessions is that we have a top 10 afterwards of the most viewed reports. So the panels that people were the most interested in. So the first thing I want to show you is this word cloud. So these are words associated with MIPCOM on social media. So something is obviously working here because you can see words like Scully for the X-Files. You can see, I'm having trouble reading it from here, Can, obviously, MIP, Hollywood Reporter, that sort of thing. That's a really interesting overview of the conversations that there have been on social media these past few days. There's obviously been, there's quite a few mentions of words like floods, thunderstorms. I don't know how many of you here were caught up in the storms on Saturday night, but I was getting a lot of feedback from people down here saying, got here on Monday, can't see the difference. So that's been something that we've been able to put behind us, fortunately. Right, so the first one of the big themes that comes up is MIPCOM's country of honor, which is Turkey. The hashtags they were using were Home of Content and Turkey at MIPCOM 2015. I don't know if any of you saw that there was one person from the Turkish delegation in particular who really stood out. It's an actress called Tuba Büyüküstün. She was at the opening night party and she was at a panel the next day. I gather, is the Turkish Sharon Stone. So you can imagine the buzz that she was generating on Twitter, and that's when you see the fan bases of people coming to life. We just saw incredible amount of buzz just around that one person. But there's the business side too, which we can talk about with Kim, because Kim was on a panel on Monday talking about the Turkish entertainment business. And Kim, you said at that panel, Turkey is the new Israel. Why did you say that?
Well, Turkey, when I came the first time I was at MIPCOM, it was a very small group of people. The booths were very small. There was no activity around those booths, and there was a trailer that I had seen called Som, which was the end. And I went and met with them, and from that meeting, it took a number of months to negotiate the rights to that, because I knew that was something that would play great in the United States, and we did the American version. And the next year, we had the rights. We sold it to Hollywood. And I found out at the panel at the beginning of the week that the week after we sold it to Hollywood, it sold to 50 countries, which was very exciting to see that we could have that kind of impact. It was the first Turkish format that had been sold into the United States. And between the first year that I came and this year, we've watched Turkey explode. And we have Som, which has now been turned into Runner, which we shot for Fox and ABC, with big stars, big budget. It's very exciting. And then we also bought İzel, which is another format from Turkey, which millions of people have seen around the world, and is now ready for an American, iteration of it. And just watching this country explode. And the other thing is, in the United States, the Latin American culture and demographic has become very important, very powerful in setting trends, consuming content, working across all platforms. And what we found is that not only does the Turkish content translate into the United States, it also translates into all the Latin American countries, which also makes it doubly important for the United States. But in watching it be bought in different parts of the world, it is a storytelling sensibility that has universal themes that are very important. So the year before we bought the Turkish format, Israel was the country that was leading in formats, and before that it was the Danes. And and so when I went in to sell Runner with my partner Ian Sander, when we talked to ABC, they knew by the publicity that we'd put out before we took the show out that Turkey had become the new Israel. So and this year, of course, they're the country of honor. So it's extraordinary to see the impact of one buy and how that can open up a market the way it did.
I was interested to hear about the link. What's the link between Turkish and Latin American culture? How does that sort of cross over?
Well, the Latin American culture, they love telenovelas and love stories and romance and, heightened drama. And that also is very much embedded. You have to have romance in the Turkish stories when they put them on television. And, we spent a lot of time with Karim, who runs, I can't pronounce the name. Ayapim. And he was talking about how, they take a story and they have to turn it for the Turkish culture. And yet, in the direction that they're turning it, it is effective, I think, all over the United States. Because when we make American shows, we make them for the United States, but we also have in mind that it's going into a global market.
Okay, so would you have any tips for people here or watching us who would like to do business with Turkey and in the TV industry?
Yeah, I mean, we found them very, very fair. We found them very supportive. And in fact, when we were shooting, we shot Runner, The End, Son. We shot that in Chicago, United States, and then we also shot it in Mexico City. And Karim, the producer, flew into Chicago and spent a few days with us to, get a sense of how the United States shoots. The one thing that's really fascinating to me about Turkey is that their shows, on average, we do a 43-minute show in the United States because we have commercials on traditional television. And then if you're doing Amazon or you're doing a show for cable and there's no commercials, it's 60 minutes. But in Turkey, they do between 90 and 127 minutes an episode. And they'll make 120 episodes in a year. I don't even know how.
Like
I don't know
films
how you
every
even
time.
do that. Although the pace is slower, and that's the one thing I would say in looking at Turkish formats, is that because they have such a big time slot to fill, 90 minutes, for a show, the pacing is much more slower and more dramatic. And in the United States, it's very fast because they're afraid they're going to lose their audience. So I would say when you're looking at the Turkish formats, be patient. And just realize that, in your country, most likely you're going to condense it some, but their pacing is for a very practical reason, to fill these big time slots.
Great, thanks very much. So the next trend that we picked out on social media, well, on MIP blog, we had 3 of our top 10 posts were about MIP Junior. And one of the biggest ones was the YouTube Keynote. That's something I'd encourage you all to check out if you haven't yet. The pitch was really interesting too in terms of new formats. Practically everyone was pitching transmedia formats as if it's sort of it's got to be done now. And we had an interesting development to the what do buyers want format, which is by adding platforms like Amazon. So it's really interesting to get their point of view on that sort of thing. The X-Files. Who saw the X-Files? What did you think? Great. It was the number 2 trending topic on Twitter about everything to do with MIPCOM. It's not surprising. It was just it was a great event. It was fantastic to have that show here. That's a show that has an amazing fan base that hasn't died in the 13 years that it's been away. But it made me think. Is it a question for the panel? What do you think of this trend? J.A. of rebooting TV shows, is it okay, or does it depend on the show?
I think it absolutely depends on the show because it depends. Is it a remake or is it a reboot? Is it a reimagining? Where do you draw the line? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the audience, if that's what they're buying, that's what I'll be making. So it's a business. So.
And it depends what the rules are as well. I mean, the X-Files is the same actors back again. You get other reboots like the Minority Report series, which is a development of the film.
It didn't do well. The ratings, people didn't show up to watch it. they're also talking about rebooting Prison Break. And the reason these reboots are happening is because the network, traditional network, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, CW, especially the first four that I mentioned, the ratings are dropping. They used to be king of ratings. And so there's a fear about launching new shows and can we bring an audience to the network. And so going to feature film reboots like Rush Hour and also these reboots like X-Files, which is actually very smart, but Minority Report, as we saw, didn't work. We'll see what happens with some of these others, is because they want to do shows that have a built-in audience. But that may not be an effective strategy.
Long term, you mean?
Yes.
I'm kind of worried that although commercially it makes sense, and of course that fear of ratings, but is it going to work creatively? And I think that's the kind of difficult area that you get into, because of course you have a built-up base of fans, but how are they going to think? Are they going to be totally disappointed and never come back to you? So yeah, I think it's a difficult area to be.
It's that, and it's also that, these shows, if you're rebooting a show, the world was very different 10 or 12 or 14 years ago, and people were very different, and their values were different. So you can't just take a show that was made and do a one-for-one conversion 15 years later and think that, it's going to hit.
But also with the talent, what's happening is really interesting because Jillian has a huge following because of The Fall. And without services like Netflix, people all over the world wouldn't be aware of what she was doing on that somewhat niche British series. And so then she can take all of those fans back with her, many of whom may have never seen her in X-Files.
That's the thing, millennials have not seen the X-Files, have they? It's that long ago.
I also think, too, if it's genre, like they did a reboot of Battlestar Galactica, which I think was one of sci-fi's biggest reboot hits.
That was amazing.
That it depends on the fans. I personally was against it, and I was mortified. Yeah, I was mortified. I was like, how can you remake my favorite show from my childhood? But it struck a chord with audiences, and I think because it is genre, that's why it worked. That's in Minority Report. Is a little bit different because it didn't start. It is a genre, but it didn't start off on television, so it's a little bit different.
So, do you say that are we saying that a lot of the time reboots can be like Hollywood seems to have this way of doing superhero movies just non-stop because those work? What we're saying is they need to be. Good. Maybe take a bit more risk. Well, yeah, define good, Kim. How long have we got?
Well, with formats, too, there are variations on a reboot. They're just a remake, but for a different market, a different country, taking Turkish romance to a Latin American U.S. audience. So I think, we're in this not only transmedia model, but also a cross-platform and cross-cultural model, and formats have had a big impact on how the business is done, including reboots.
Okay, so let's get on to the next one. Jennette Mccurdy is an actress, and she stars in a Netflix series, which is the first Canadian Netflix series.
She stars in Between.
She was the most influential person on Twitter at MIPCOM. She only tweeted a couple of times, but she has 6.3 million followers, so lots of people saw that. What I thought was interesting about her is that the pitch of her show is it takes place in a village where which is wiped out by a plague. And everyone is killed except the under 22-year-olds. So it's sort of made for millennials.
Would we all be dead then?
Yeah, well, let's not go to that show then. No. But someone to follow, young up-and-coming actress and probably Canadian, I thought.
She was the star of iCarly. I'm not sure what her citizenship is, but that deal was also really interesting for Canada because it was our first Netflix original. And the way that the deal went down was that it got funding from a traditional broadcaster and from a Canadian OTT service, and then Netflix got Rest of World. So that show will now run on multiple Netflix services, as well as day and date in Canada.
But will anyone over 22 watch it?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it is aimed squarely at millennials. Yeah.
If Netflix ever let us look at their data, then maybe we'll find out. Disruption. Now, this is a very broad theme, but it's something that I noticed and we noticed on MIPblog kept coming up at this MIPCOM is changing viewing habits. Ericsson presented a really interesting set of research about this, just saying that 8 out of 10 teens are watching some form of streamed video or TV every day. So what does that, this is sort of confirming a trend that we've been seeing at MIPS for a good few years now. What does that mean for how TV content is not only consumed, but how should it be made to keep up with those changing habits? You were moderating the Disruptors panel. What did you take away from that?
Well, one of the disruptors that I had on my panel was from Spotify. And it's interesting because I think of them as such a mature company now, a streaming music and rights delivery company. And what he said is they're now getting into the original content space. And I kind of wondered if companies like Netflix weren't getting into that space as well, if Spotify... So
you mean video content?
Yeah, exactly.
For a music company.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is a big deal.
And so, I think even these digital companies now have disruptors from within. And so he's now faced with the challenge of disrupting a company that's basically just been a flow-through for other rights and bringing an original content generation up through that business and then delivering that to fans as well. And I think it's a really smart move for them if they can pull it off.
It's quite a gamble, isn't it, for a music company to be getting into video?
Or for let's say for a distribution company to be getting into content.
But then, let's face it, a lot of what's consumed on YouTube is music, so works both ways.
Yes.
Yeah. We just did I'll go around to the branded content later, but we just did a piece on YouTube that was 24 minutes long, and it got 6.3 million views in 3 weeks. So people are watching on different platforms, particularly YouTube. They're starting to watch, a longer length because always everybody believed it was 5 minutes. But I just wanted to say about the disruption that she's talking about also affects all of you, because if people are watching on all different platforms and they have control of what they're watching, when they're watching, how they're watching, we all know that, then what's happening is they're consuming content much faster. And in the United States, we have between 9 months and a year. That's the development pipeline to get a pilot into production and ordered into series. Not the series itself, just the pilot. And the idea that content is being consumed so fast means that in the United States, our pipeline is not operating fast enough, and that people are there's a need on all these platforms for more content faster. And so what that means is that we need to look overseas and around the world for new content that is a proof of concept that doesn't have to go through the development season of 9 months to a year in the United States. Like, for instance, The End. Looking at that, that's a show that can work, so you can move it through the pipeline faster. So I think this whole disruption thing is an opportunity for everybody here and everybody who's been at MIPCOM to, find buyers and platforms and get your content out there, where in the United States there was a higher threshold in the past.
Fascinating. Have you noticed that, Ali, in your on your producer apprenticeship, that how content is just being consumed in so many different ways? You're always publishing videos all over the place, and what do you learn? What's your first-hand experience of how people are consuming content differently?
Well, if I can tell you something slightly different, it's not about just the consumption. I think the consumption now, it is so all talking about first screen and second screen. It's completely, what's the word? Irrelevant, talking about first screens and second screens. It's just a matter of now consuming your content wherever you are, however you want. So, and I think for that reason, I quite like the idea of thinking outside the box. Although it is very, I think, dangerous and risky for Spotify to get into video content game, but at the same time, I think it's fascinating for us when producing content to talk to people like Spotify and see what can they bring to the table. How can we collaborate in creating amazing next gen, I know that's one of the phrases that you like, next gen content that will chime in the audiences who do not necessarily have any commitments to any type of consumption. So, okay, we have all these new opportunities. What can we produce for them? What can we give them that will fit their consumption habits? And if you haven't seen that Ericsson report, it's fantastic. Go have a look. I have one copy that I'd be selling for $1,000, but come see me later.
No, that was actually one of them. I'm afraid I can't remember who said it, but it was one of the good quotes of this market is that for young people today, there's first screen, second screen makes no difference. It's that whatever screen is closest is that's it. Yeah. So your next production is going to be on Snapchat then, is it, Ali?
Okay, I'll make a confession. I'm not on Snapchat yet, so maybe you can Snapchat me. Is that how you say it? Snapchat me, or so? No. Well, I'll tell you when I figure it out. I'll tell you all.
We'll sort it out.
My whole question in this is, it's great that everybody's getting into, look, I can shoot a video, I can put a video up on Facebook, YouTube, wherever, but in sitting in a lot of panels as a producer and as someone who has to answer to a group of investors, you have 6.3 million views on YouTube. Were you able to monetize that? Can I monetize it,
Yeah.
Was it through your views or was it through a different,
Yeah, well, here's how we monetize. So then I would go into the branded content.
Sorry,
do you want me to
we
wait?
just kind of went.
I'll wait, and then I'll tell you.
Sorry,
I'll
we
give it to you.
Jumping at the bit. But
sorry, no, but I mean, even with, I think I missed the Facebook because I was trying to still get with the terrestrial because it comes down to monetization. It's, again, as a music person that has music in my shows, my royalties from Spotify are practically non-existent. It's like, hey, you got X amount of downloads, and it's like, hey, that's great. I made 50 cents. I can't make my money back.
Like most artists on Spotify, unfortunately.
Right, but you have to at some point monetize it. I have 4 million views on Facebook. Great. At what point? Again, it comes with the intersection of, is it advertising and is it going to get me money?
Well, we're going to get on to one of the ways of funding that, which is branded content later. But yeah, there's plenty to talk about. Okay, so we'll move on to the next bit of the panel. Is that I've asked each of the speakers to come along with their one big trend of the market. Catherine, you did really well because the theme that you chose was also the number 7 trending topic on Twitter. It was TV and Twitter. It's not surprising in a way because they were speaking here. They were getting all their accounts tweeting about their session, and so five or six Twitter accounts were in the top 10 most influential Twitter accounts here at MIPCOM. So, as we were saying, it's at least they know how to work their own platform.
Touché. So, well, one of the things that they told us was that 370 years worth of video are watched on Twitter every day. So this is just such an incredible number. I would like the fact checkers and journalists in the audience to verify that. But they, Twitter has really upped its game in terms of allowing people to create video. So they have a tool called Snappy TV that allows professionals and basically anyone to create video that you could launch anywhere. It does not have to just be on Twitter. And then with their tool Amplify, let's say you're a broadcaster and there's a tweetable moment that happens in a broadcast, you can tweet up that video clip. Twitter will monetize that for you, and you guys revenue share on that. And then, well, obviously we've talked about distribution because they have, they're claiming like a reach of 1 billion people daily for this video. So, you know, I was excited to hear Twitter represent itself as a partner for premium content, as a partner for producers, as a partner for broadcasters, which is so very different from how many social networks in the early days launched and were perceived as somewhat antithetical to our model or adversarial. So, you know, Twitter has new leadership. I guess it remains to be seen what it does with these tools, but I'm really excited about their potential for us, both in terms of deal making, monetization, and then of course socializing for our clients.
Well, I mean, you could definitely tell when they were here how sort of serious they are about really partnering with the industry. It's a different approach from Facebook's and also from YouTube's. What I thought was interesting about what they said, they got the Dr. Bassem Youssef from Egypt, who was talking about the way he uses Twitter for when he's making content to, this was the quote we've got up here, to manage the explosion of emotion and then choose what's best for you for your show and content. So what I thought was fascinating there is this, using this sort of constant feedback loop of, it's not just I'm watching a show and I'm tweeting about it, it's I'm in this sort of engagement with the audience all the time. I'm using Twitter to say, oh, my fans are asking me to do a show about this. Is that something that you advise some of your clients to do?
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously there's live tweeting, which really promotes engagement. What you're talking about is like a whole new level of, say, co-development with your Twitter audience. I think that works best, you know, possibly not for long, sweeping, scripted dramas, but more for reality or short-form content. And yes, I mean, I believe he spoke about the Arab Spring as well. So he was talking specifically about news value as well, and building audience around you know, events that are taking the world's interest by storm.
There's all sorts of ways Twitter can be combined with TV. But one thing we were talking about when we were prepping for this session, I have this preconceived idea that tweeting and social TV is mostly for event TV, like Pop Idol or sports. What a lot of you were saying, that it's also, you're getting people tweeting during fiction and you're encouraging that sort of thing. Doesn't that take viewers' attention off the show?
No, it actually doesn't. We do it for our TV shows. Last year we had Reckless on CBS, and now it's on Netflix. But when it was rolling out and premiering, you know, in the first season, every Sunday night during the 2-hour block, it was a 1-hour show, but it aired in different time zones. So every Sunday night, our actors, our writers, the director of the episode, some of the all of our stars, but then some of the other actors who appeared in those particular episodes, we would all go to the CBS Broadcast Center, and when the show was broadcasting at that time slot, we would all be tweeting, and it was incredible because we were the only show of all of the primetime summer shows on network television that built an audience. All the other audiences went down, and I believe that between doing the tweeting during the shows and also our total engagement experience, which is this creative and business model we did that drives people across all platforms for the assets that we create, in addition to the television experience itself, built that show where it had not only a really good following, but a following that built through the summer.
Okay, but I'm just sorry to sort of suspend disbelief, but if I think of a series that I really love, like Game of Thrones, I wouldn't want to be looking at Twitter during it because I might miss someone getting killed.
Right. But people don't watch, you don't, and maybe on your very favorite show where you're just glued to the screen, but predominantly very few people watch television with just watching television. They all have their phones in their hands or their laptops, and that's a very, very aggressive trend that's growing. For people 60 and over, they don't, which is a lot of the CBS audience, particularly in their old shows. But people are active all the time. They're always on their phones. That's why, commercials, they used to think that people didn't watch commercials because we would fast forward through them. But now, because people are on their phones, what they're finding is that the commercials are staying on. You're not moving through commercials anymore.
And not everybody likes blood as much as you do, because we all here know that you have some Romanian roots in you. So that Dracula story, we know where it comes from. But I have a question for...
That Dracula story, you remember that?
But, Catherine, can I ask you a question? Because it's very interesting that with fiction and reality TV, that sort of Twitter engagement is very ripe. But I keep thinking, how do you implement that with great factual documentary shows?
Oh, well, I guess the best example of that this year was what happened with HBO and the Jinx, because that just took off like a rocket ship on Twitter, on Reddit, on social, in moment. So talk about like being on the edge of your seat, and without spoiling it for those of you who haven't seen it, but many of us were second screening, and that season or documentary 6-episode series has one of the most shocking endings of anything I've ever seen in my life. And
just give it a bit of context. Sorry.
This is The Jinx, which is a true crime, 1 hour long, 6-episode series that HBO aired in January 2015. And I think it was a perfect example of a blend of Twitter, live tweeting, and documentary. And then when the show ended and everyone was like, screamed and jumped out of our seats, the next question was, what do we watch next? So what other true crime thing can we now binge on? And everyone giving each other recommendations led to documentaries like The Staircase, other Academy Award-winning true crime BBC shows that you can see for free on YouTube. So it served as a wonderful recommendation engine as well.
Great. How do you use your fan base, J.A.? You're saying you have fans all over the world, and especially in Asia. How do you engage with them on social media?
Post pictures about being at MIPCOM and see how they like it. Post from my MIP blog. And I actually disagree about CBS, because Scorpion, there's a whole legion of Scorpion watchers on CBS that we're madly tweeting and Facebooking, going, oh my gosh, did you just see that? And we actually, I think, do sit and watch the commercials now. Yeah. So if it's something that I like, I mean, chances are my fans are going to like it too. So there's this whole online community of creators, actors and actresses. Robert Patrick will tweet during Scorpion. I think you said you're actors and actresses. It's just this big online community where we get to interact with everybody. And by the same token, a lot of my fans have no clue what MIPCOM was, but they do now. So,
thanks for
and
that.
it's exciting to them to say, hey, there's this group of people in Cannes that buy and sell the films and maybe have more of an influence on what they're seeing.
We were also saying that social media is becoming more visual, which is why also Twitter was insisting on video so much. Why is that so important, this visual aspect, not just video but also photos?
Well, I guess we're visual creatures, and it only makes sense. And we're also living in a global society. And so if the action is happening in a country where I don't speak the language, I still want to be included in the conversation, and video and stills obviously convey that for us, as we saw very well with the tragedy of the flood. And those videos, as you mentioned, were were trending here. And a lot of people were able to very quickly share with others exactly what their experience was like in the moment in a way that a simple tweet might not have conveyed. It might have seemed flip or cavalier in the face of what was going on. And so the image captures it in a way that might be more transparent.
The text can't, of course. And it also helps, like you mentioned, in the sort of global context. Jay, you were saying you have, again, with these fans all over the world, you need to communicate more visually with them, otherwise they won't understand.
Yes, and I also think that goes to, I come from a background of genre filmmaking where there's not a lot of dialogue, because when, as a producer, we have to deliver to the distributors, we have to give them a dialogue list, and often it can be translated up to 25 different languages. So if you have one very powerful visual image that you can share with your fans and you can communicate just visually, I think it's vastly more effective, because I don't have to translate the tweet or anything into 25 different languages.
Okay, great. Next trend is your trend, Jay. It's the terrestrial to online social crossover. We've talked about a lot of it already, haven't we?
Yeah, we've talked about it quite extensively.
Whoops.
Which kind of, as I was talking to Kim earlier, which then crosses over into 6.3 million viewers on YouTube, and having commercials, and how do you monetize? Because if we don't monetize, we can't afford to make more content, and good high quality content that can be globally accepted. So it's pretty much, how do you have a show in your country and at the same time increase awareness globally?
And also, this is a question that we've also a lot of DIY musicians have to deal with as well. Is what is the right amount of time to spend? Is there a right amount of time to spend on social media versus actual creating content? Have you found the right balance?
I found the right balance for me. Whenever I first started blogging for MIPblog, I would always send James these emails. Okay, when are you gonna post it? Because I found, you're laughing, but it's very true. Because, and this is just for my particular set of fans, there's always metrics that if you're a subscriber that they will give to you, and your fans are online between this time and that time. Your most effective posts are on Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so you can set your timer to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But you can't post too much, but you can't post too little, because you still need to have them engaged. And at the same time, they have metrics that say, I drink a lot of coffee, obviously. So my fans obviously drink a lot of coffee. Huh?
We can't tell.
You can't tell? Really? I can't? Okay. But you can say, if I include coffee hashtag in my post, I'm going to get a 30% lift, because that's what my fans like. If I mention a random topic, they're going to be like, what is this? I'm not going to like it. Go away. Come back to me next Tuesday. So.
But that's what I found fascinating when you were telling me about this the other day. You have this really scientific approach to social media. You're doing all your research, and you're teaching me a thing or two as well.
Yeah. There are these computer programmers at Facebook that they keep changing their algorithm, and a lot of it, as you know, we have Nielsen ratings to say, okay, between this time and that time, sci-fi has a very formulaic, okay, at 7 minutes in, we need to have the first death kill. Okay, after you come back from commercial break, we need to have this happen. I don't know if it's like that with drama, but there's a very formulaic methodology to behavioral habits of people. And I think Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, once you've captured that, you've captured the market.
Great. Can I push you a bit for the split? What is it, 20% social, 80% creating, or how do you spend your time? Do you see what I'm getting at?
I spent most of my time creating Monday. We posted blog Tuesday. The next today's Thursday. I'll have a post tomorrow.
I mean creating video. I mean creating...
actually creating content?
Yeah. Depends if you're actually on a project or not, maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of like coming to a MIPCOM. I know that for MIP Cancun, they're like, hey, come to MIP Cancun. You know, it's next month in November. And I'm like, but I don't have anything to sell. I just sold everything. So now I have to go create to come to the next market. So now I'm going to be in pre-production on my next project. So
it's cyclical.
And I may create more product in the spring as opposed to the fall. It's like having TV seasons for series. You take a break and then you come back.
So you were worried about how you were going to fund that production. Kim might have an answer for you with her theme, which is, it's not just branded content. It's actually, I took a couple of your suggestions and put them together. It's branded content that is also interconnected. That's your big trend, Kim. Why is that?
Well, branded content is a new kind of content that's moving to the forefront, and it's going to provide new opportunities and new ways to make money. So rather than having the traditional networks or the traditional platforms pay for and sponsor this content, the new thing that's coming up, like Red Bull, and we've done a number of these, but the most recent one is with Marriott. So Marriott has now created a studio, Marriott International Studios, and they came to us and wanted to do their first piece of global content. So they gave us 3 parameters, which was hit millennials, don't shoot it in the United States, and very, very lightly embed the message, travel brilliantly, which is their tagline. And they did not want it to be a commercial. So, and the other thing that was important to them is that they felt that in their research, and they're not wrong about this, that every minute of content online, you risk the chance of somebody diving off and going to look at something else and losing those eyeballs. So in response to that first concern was for us to come up with something that would answer that problem or that challenge, and that was to do magical realism. So what we did was we did a story in Paris. It was 24 minutes long. It had a magical realism element to it, so every minute of it, even though the story was the story, that was the most important thing, and the characters and all of that, that there was something unique happening visually that would make you lean in. So there was a flying laptop and lots of other things. And if you go to FrenchKiss.com, you will find this film. So what was into what? FrenchKissFilm.com. Thank you. And
Good
what was
more
interesting? Right? What was yes? Who knows what you would end up with?
Steady on, Ellie.
Thank you.
Oh my.
So the things that we did with it was that we put it on YouTube, and it got 6.1 million views in 15 days. And then the next thing was that we, of course, reached out on Twitter. We did our total engagement experience, drove eyeballs. And Marriott put it in 1 million hotels around the world. It's on Virgin Atlantic Airlines. And we did a big premiere in Hollywood. Through our relationships, we invited a lot of stars. We had 57 stars show up to walk the red carpet, which brought in a lot of press. We did the same thing in Paris. And Marriott also ran it in theaters in Los Angeles, so now it's qualified for a short in the for Oscars, and now it's making the rounds of film festival. It's just won its first film festival, and it's been accepted into a multitude of others. So we paid $300,000 for the cost of that film shooting in Paris. That's what Marriott's budget was, and in return for that, what they got, that Gray's marketing did an analysis, which was outside our company, so it was a third party for Marriott, and they got $8.4 million worth of marketing and publicity. So it monetized on the Marriott side. Pardon me?
In terms of paid media, earned media, sorry.
By marketing and publicity and stories that were done, and following and chatting and all that kind of stuff. And then Marriott also created a French Kiss package, so when you went to Paris, you could go to each one of the locations that we shot at and have that experience and get a suite. And so their monetization was by product and also marketing and publicity. And our monetization was that we got paid for the content. We own 50% of the content. So any platform that we put it on in the future, you know, it will earn money for us. So there's, you know, the way that you earn earn revenue, but there's also the way that you're reaching a much bigger audience. And I had said earlier when we were doing our casual discussion in preparation for this that if you think back to the 1940s when in the United States there was the Milton Berle show and it was sponsored by Texaco, that's where we're going. Is it's going to be less about the network and the studio and more about the brand that's sponsoring it, because brands are finding that when they stand at the top of their mountains and they shout about their brands as they did with traditional commercials, what they're finding is that particularly with millennials, but people in general aren't connecting with it. They don't care as much. So if they can partner with content creators like all of us who can create characters and story that their clients care about. So for instance, Marriott has 35 million millennials who are part of their rewards program. So to be able to give them content rather than commercials and just artwork that says, stay at Marriott, that is a much more effective way to connect with clients and make those clients loyal. So Marriott has 35 million millennials. Any network in the United States, and I'm sure around the world, would die to have 35 million millennials show up for a television show. So the next play with us after doing French Kiss is that Marriott is interested in doing a television show with us. So, and we've had that experience with General Motors and some of these other brands. So it's a very important part of content creation that is coming to the forefront, and you should keep an eye on it.
It's great, and there's a MIP link there as well because the Marriott were brand of the year.
Right. So I had let Sarah know, Sarah Hemer, at MIPCOM that we were doing this project with Marriott, and they had been tracking Marriott, and they made Marriott the brand of the year on the digital side, which was extraordinary. So it was this incredible full circle.
And just a great experience for you as a producer, and I didn't, the thing about keeping 50%, I mean, so that's something that you can keep generating revenue with in a rights point of view. That's fantastic.
Right. Yeah, and then the final thing that is really interesting is rather than doing content with the studio, which we all know how that process is, but to do content with a company is very interesting, and a service company like Marriott was extraordinary because they're in the hospitality and people service business. So when you partner with somebody like that and they're servicing you and they're servicing the client and they're servicing the content, it's an amazing experience.
I would like to talk about the interconnected part as well, but we're going to run out of time with Ali, and Ali talks a lot, so we... But I think just to make sure we've covered that point, the interconnected thing is you've got the main content, and then that's connected to other sorts of content.
Yeah, there's a thing that my partner and I have created called the Total Engagement Experience, which is on all these different platforms, whether it's publishing or music or the internet and gaming, that when we create a television show, we also create all of those assets for the audience to engage. So what it does is it creates press buzz and continues to through the life of the show because it keeps it fresh. It creates a loyal engagement and a more dimensional experience for the audience because you're not just doing a television show, you're doing a world, which is also attracts more exciting writers and directors because they want to create worlds. They don't want to create just television shows. And the last part, and I think this is one of the most important things other than servicing the fans, is it creates new revenue sources. So those revenue sources come from brands and they sponsor these different kinds of assets so that there's a new revenue source coming into the show because shows get more expensive as they go because wages go up and the cost of living and all those kinds of things. So if you can mitigate that and keep that show at a cost that's very reasonable while you're growing the audience and the length of the show, then that's a big win. So the total engagement experience through this interconnectedness is really, really effective. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Okay, Ali, you've got 6 minutes and 30 seconds to talk about your trend. I'm sorry, please don't take it the wrong way.
I would certainly not take it the wrong way.
We've just had so many fascinating things to talk about.
This is the right way. I just realized I am the last speaker of MIPCOM 2015. No pressure. So basically all I'm going to do, I'm going to try and encourage you and share my passion with you for factual television, and that's all. It's not going to take 6 minutes, I promise. But let me tell you one thing, or two, or three. I was hosting let's run it from the beginning. I was hosting the factual mega session yesterday, and it was absolutely fascinating. So in factual television, there are some things which are really propelling content creators. There's, of course, technology. So everybody's now talking about 4K. Everybody's moving towards 4K. So what does that mean for content? It means content is going to look fantastic. It's going to be so good. You'll want to go to your screens and lick it. I promise. It's fantastic. And I think put it in the context of... Put it in the context of watching, for instance, the Great Barrier Reef with David Attenborough. That's BBC. Hang on, Atlantic Productions are making. I'm not sure if it's for the BBC or not. Probably it is.
I think it's Atlantic, but yeah, we'll
it is Atlantic
check.
Productions for sure. They're making it, but it might be for the BBC or it might not. But it is absolutely fascinating, breathtaking material. And Attenborough has gone back 60 years. After he first went to the Barrier Reef. But this time, again, we are at such an amazing time. I think we're all very lucky people. There's the Yellow Submarine, which Attenborough hops on, 88-year-old, the energy of a 30-year-old, and then goes down for the first time the deepest level of the Great Barrier Reef. So it's just fascinating stuff. It's on board a U.S. research ship. If I can bridge to the other side of technology now virtual reality, I've got 421. Virtual reality is becoming also a big part of factual television or factual content. So far, we've always looked at virtual reality in gaming and porn. Now, you can basically put your cheap goggles on, and then you can walk around, you can turn around, and you are under the water, deep sea, and then before you know it, David Attenborough appears in his Yellow Submarine. It's fantastic. I did try it. It was really good, although I didn't have my glasses on with the goggles. So Attenborough was very hazy at the very best. But apart from the technology side, apart from the great cameras and virtual reality, I think we keep talking about the golden age of TV. And normally we're talking about it in terms of drama. We're talking about House of Cards and the rest of it. And I asked my panelists from National Geographic, BBC and Atlantic Productions, so is this something that inspires you? And I think it does, because look at the scope of the program making, look at the quality of it. It's not just about the quality of that image that you want to like. It's also about the quality of content in itself, about amazing filmmaking. So I think one of the crossovers is you bring big drama, fiction world stars to do documentaries. For instance, Nat Geo.
Well, there's also storytelling in factual, of course, isn't there?
Exactly.
You've got to tell a story.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that's what I'm trying to get at, the quality of storytelling apart from technology. And then you bring Morgan Freeman to tell you the story of God, which many people believe actually Morgan Freeman is God. I think David Attenborough might be God or the voice of God, but I don't know. Well, we'll talk about that. So yes, I am extremely excited, and I think the field is very, very wide open. Content creators of the factual world are bringing us some fantastic stuff, and I think we just need to keep our eyes peeled and watch for what's next. And I give you 2 minutes and 13 seconds to quiz me.
What about do you think there'll be a democratization of factual, Ali? Now, we were saying now all the latest smartphones, you can now film in 4K with them. What does that mean? That's not just going to be drunk party films, is it? People will be going out into nature and making their own documentaries.
He is actually showing off his new 6S.
I'm not.
iPhone 6S. Not all of us have that, but yes, absolutely. Look, the point is, I mean, 10 years ago, if you wanted to buy a good camera and go and shoot nature or history or whatever, you had to spend hundreds of thousands. Now, your iPhone, your GoPro, your Blackmagic, which is like a cinema camera, does the job, and it's, I don't know, £1,000. So I think that democratization is partly because of the new technologies, because what we can buy very cheaply now, and at the same time because we've been exposed to so much great content that if we do those drunken stuff, if we do bad quality content, it's sacrilege. We better die. What the hell is that? Because we have seen it all. We have seen amazing stuff. So we need to evolve. Evolution is not just about hunting, gathering. It's also about creating excellent content.
You really wanted that to be the last word of MIPCOM, didn't you, Ali? That's a pretty good one.
That was well said.
And I must leave 40 seconds for any, and you've got any really quick questions, because I know people want to get off planes and things. Did any of you have any questions for any of our fantastic speakers today?
Please.
Yes?
Hi, my name is Shireen. I am from South Africa. I work for a media agency called Omnicom Group, and I represent South Africa. And I agree to your point in terms of investing in content, because we're going into content marketing. It was very interesting coming to MIPCOM because I wanted to understand the dynamics around content marketing. What I didn't understand, understanding from a marketer's perspective, that content builds effectiveness over a long-term period of time for us to measure. Twitter, TV, and Facebook has the platforms to drive reach, and you have to apply frequency to build an audience, but it doesn't give you the demographic insights for us as marketers to build on that insights so that we can explore where content is working or not.
Oh, yes, it does.
I was going to say, yeah,
So,
it does.
because that's the
Yeah, it
question
does.
I've been asking all day. I mean,
Maybe you're not
even on
asking the right
Facebook,
people.
yeah. I mean, it's why I wanted to come. I'm not
Yeah.
getting that.
From a Facebook, I can tell you what time my Facebook fans interacted with my page, if they're male, if they're female, if
And
they're
age,
married.
yeah.
If they're married.
I
can
really, I mean, for me, sitting here for 4 days, I'm trying to understand, you know.
One thing you could do is you could experiment with ad buying on some of these platforms, like Facebook and Twitter, just very, very quickly. Once you get into the back end and you do your targeting, you'll see how unbelievably specific it is.
Yeah, no, we do that, and I think I think from South Africa we're a little bit more ring-fenced in terms of stuff that we do get. It just would be very interesting if some of you could share that. We do ad buying. We look at effectiveness. I think from a branded content perspective, I mean, I'm working on a paper with Millward on looking at measurement of branded content. So you've got offline, online, and it needs to be measured holistically. And we can't find a measuring tool that does that either.
Give me your card. Give me your card before you
Thanks.
leave. Okay.
If I may, just so you know, I was on the Facebook panel, and there are different platforms, and I can't speak to Twitter, but Facebook does have Pages Manager, they have regular Facebook, and they have Facebook Mentions. And each one of those will give you a different marketing demographic, and you have to be on the right platform for the reach to get those metrics.
Okay, so welcome to chat after the panel, of course.
You can come
All our
talk to me.
speakers are will come down from the pedestal. So that's it for this session. That's it for MIPCOM. Thank you very much for
Thank you, James.
coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you to our amazing speakers, and safe journey home.